Hello, hello. Here we are again, coming to you on 44 different platforms around the world on Broadcast Team Alpha and the Paranormal World Show. And we have a delightful guest with us today, one that's going to educate us on the higher dimensions of consciousness a little bit. For us that still have one foot back in the box and we just can't seem to be leaving the box behind. There is always this thing called doubt, but we're going to hear things that will open up our mind to the fact that yes, there is stuff out there. There's things, there is individuals, there is people, there is all kinds of things outside of this reality that we will do very well and start investigating before we are majorly going to experience it. So yes, we are on 44 different platforms, and my name is Aage, and one of these platforms is the Conscious Awakening Network. So go over there and check them out. They got about 50 different shows over there on all kinds of different things about subjects that both you and me need to know about. I'll spend some major time over there, and it's good stuff. Go to consciousawakeningnetwork.org and have a look. You're going to like it. So now we are going to delve into the paranormal real heavy. And my guest with me today is Diane Calderon. And for those of you out there that like to surf the internet at the same time that you listen, here is her website, dianecalderon.com. And when we are done with the show, if you want to connect with her to maybe ask some questions, and chances are that you have some mysterious things that has happened to you that maybe you would like to have a little more explanation to, you can contact her on Diane Calderon 46, that is the numbers 46, at gmail.com. That is Diane Calderon 46 at gmail.com. And welcome to the show, Diane.
Thank you very much, Augie, for inviting me to be a guest on your program. I'm looking forward to our little discussion here, and hopefully we'll open up a few minds to the world of possibilities.
Yes, there is all kinds of possibilities, and we're going to discuss some of them. I know about 10 years ago you had an incredible experience. It's kind of a sad one, I suppose, when uh, your son died.
Yes.
And let's touch on that moment. How did it feel? How did it feel at that time? And compare to after you were able to communicate with him. That had to be two different, majorly different experiences. The first one may be of sadness, and the second one may be of a delight that, wait a minute, he's still here. What? Take us through the beginning first.
Okay, if I may indulge your audience. In the beginning, early 2014, I was in a bit of a quandary in my own life. My husband and I had been retired for a while, and my husband had been diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. So I was in the middle of caregiving for him as he was rapidly declining into that state of dementia, which was very challenging to go through. My nearest relative and the one who was always available to help me through the caregiving phase was my son, Matthew. Matthew was in his mid-30s. He did live a couple of hours away from us, but Matthew was one of those really good kids. He wasn't married. He didn't have any real attachments yet, but he was available on his off days from his work to come up and help me with his dad. So I relied on Matthew during this period of time in which I didn't know where my life was going to be heading. I knew my husband wouldn't be here forever. Dementia is a horrible thing, and he was slipping away from me. So one night, my husband and I were watching television, and it was just a program on politics. And as we were sitting there, and he's actually paying attention to the program that night, I happened to notice an unusual phenomenon, and it was sparkling lights. And these were like in front of my face, an arm's length away, and it was like a little ball of a sparkler of different colored lights just flickering right in front of me. And they showed up, and they were just there for 2-3 seconds, enough for me to notice them, and they disappeared. Now, I have not been a person who has hallucinated. I hadn't been drinking. I'm not into any kinds of drugs or drinks or any of that. I'm just a normal person, and I'm seeing these weird lights in front of me. So I looked over at my husband and I thought, okay, wonder if he saw that. And I looked over at him and he's focused on the television, and I saw the same lights appear in front of him. And again, about an arm's length away from his face, but he did not notice them. It was as if he saw right through these lights. They disappeared. So now I'm looking straight ahead again and I'm thinking, okay, maybe I am hallucinating. That is really weird. Don't know what's going on here.
Yeah.
The lights showed up again. This time they showed up, they flickered for several seconds, long enough to move from the front of my face to my left at about a 90-degree angle. I followed the lights, I tracked them, and they disappeared. So I'm kind of like in shock that I'm seeing things. But when they disappeared, it drew my attention to a book that was sitting on a table next to me, one that I had not noticed previously, that I guess my husband had dropped there as he would wander around the house, pick things up and drop them. And it was a book about Edgar Cayce. So I'm looking at that book and I forgot the lights because now I'm focused on the meaning of the book. I picked it up and I was excited because my son Matthew was supposed to come up and see us the following day. And he and I had had a conversation days before when he was last at the house. And our conversation led into some very interesting topics on spiritual stuff. And I remember telling him at the time, Matt, I don't know where I got this idea from, but I believe that you chose me as your mom before you came here. You were up there in heaven and you were looking for a parent and you chose me. So don't blame me if we didn't always get along. I don't know where I got that idea from, but it's something I believe for a very long time. And he kind of laughed it off. So here I am holding this book, and the realization was instantaneous that, oh, I got that idea about kids choosing their parents from Edgar Cayce. And I know it's in this book. I opened that book and boom, I was right on that page. I mean, I didn't have to flip, it was right there. And so I read the book or that section of it, and I was excited because, hey, I'm going to show this to Matt tomorrow. I'm going to show him where I got that idea that he picked me. So I'm a little excited. I'm ignoring the television. I'm go ahead and read some more of the book, eventually set it down. So this was on a Tuesday evening. I kind of forgot about those lights because that book seemed more important to me at the time. Next morning, I get up, go through the routine where my husband, I get him up, get him to the table, get him breakfast. Then I'm going to run down to pick up the newspaper. I live in a rural area. I have to drive about a quarter of a mile or 3/4 of a mile to get the paper off the highway. And as I'm driving, I have bluebirds fly along the car. And the bluebirds were like, surprise, surprise, why are there bluebirds? Because in my area, we don't have bluebirds. It's not a common thing. But here's these bluebirds flying alongside the car. So I'm thinking, wow, that's really a cool sight. Geez, they're so pretty. And then my mind drifts off to my little boy, Matt, when he was young, singing Mr. Bluebird on my shoulder, zippity doo dah. And then bluebirds flying over the rainbow where bluebirds fly. So my mind goes off into that little fairy tale land, and I get back home, settle down, have breakfast, get my husband settled for the afternoon, and the phone rings. Pick up the phone, and it was from a Phoenix police detective. My son lived in Phoenix. And the detective proceeds to ask questions to connect me to Matthew, and then tell me that Matthew had been killed the night before in a tragic hit and run. So my whole world fell apart instantaneously. Everything that I had believed as a mother just went out the window. He was my only son, and Matthew is now gone. And the timing was, kind of crummy because I'm dealing with this husband of mine that I need help with, and Matthew has flown from the nest and gone somewhere else. So boy, did I have a long day after that
Yeah.
phone call. I had to tell my husband. He didn't quite understand because at that moment his mind wasn't all there. It was more like, oh, I'm sorry, patted me on the head, and the afternoon moved on. But it did, lead to having to make phone calls and moments of grief and crying and trying to understand why now, why did he leave now, and why was he crossing that road? And because what the detective said is he was crossing a road and a car hit him. And my son's 35. Why is he crossing this road? He should have seen this car.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is. He's gone. So that night, I'm sitting at my dining room table. My husband was asleep, and I was waiting for relatives to come in. My sisters had flown in from out of state and were driving up to spend a couple of weeks with me and help me deal with what you need to deal with after someone has died. And I'm sitting at the table, and I was thinking over the last few days and my last conversation with my son when he was here. And I remembered a part of that conversation went along the lines of, Matt, I'm older than you. I will probably die before you. But if by rare chance you should die before me, let's just make a promise right now that whoever dies, whoever leaves this life, needs to come back and give the other person a sign. And he kind of looked at me like I was like, off my rocker, but he said, well, okay, mom, sure. Yeah, yeah, I promise. So we left it at that. I'm sitting there remembering the conversation, and I got a little upset, and I'm like, hey, Matt, we made a promise. You were supposed to come and give me a sign. I didn't get a sign. And then boom, it hit me. Whoa, wait. What
Suddenly, yeah,
happened? Yeah. I mean, I had to review it. It's like, wait, what time did the detective tell me this accident occurred? And Matthew left pretty instantaneously. It was a serious accident. What time did I see that sparkling light in front of my face? Not once, not twice, 3 times. It was the same time that I was told Matthew got hit by that car. That transformed my life instantaneously. The idea that my son, he had passed on, he had left this physical world. It was a very tragic and unexpected situation, and it was a hard thing to deal with. But he had reached out from that spirit world to communicate to me, hey, mom, I'm still right here. I'm right here. And I'm with you. At the moment he died. And I'm telling you, Augie, that changed my whole perspective. That
yeah.
helped me make it through the following days, weeks, months, and to the point where I am now.
Well, and he also, after he dropped the body, he learned how to fly. Well, as a bird.
Yeah, yeah. It's just amazing looking back at those birds showing up as they did. I learned later because his death led me on a quest to find out, well, what does happen when people pass over to the spirit world? How do they communicate with it? How do they reach us? And so I did an awful lot of reading, and eventually took workshops, and I learned a whole lot about spirit communication. Signs that they send us include birds, and there's a way that spirit can manipulate the birds. They can use their energy to draw our attention to them when we're thinking about them. For instance, months later, it's almost a year after my son had died, is my first Christmas without him. And I'm sitting here feeling sorry for myself. And my husband was in far worse shape. And it was a glum morning when I got up that day. And I'm sitting on the edge of the bed and thinking, oh gosh, my first Christmas without Matt, and some of those memories of, the kids as they grow up and you have parties and whatever,
Yeah.
came to flow, and I started to get a little, emotional. And I heard a noise, and I looked out my window, and I saw some birds right outside at a bush where there's berries, and they were eating these winter berries. And I thought, well, that's really cool. That's nice. And then I thought of my son and the bluebirds. These were not bluebirds eating the berries, but I thought of bluebirds, and something else caught my attention out in the yard. And there, sitting on a tree stump, was a blue jay, a big blue jay. And he's sitting there and he's looking off in one direction. And I thought, oh my God, Matthew, is that your Christmas gift for me? A bluebird, a blue jay. Thank you. And as soon as I thought that, that blue jay looked at me. He turned and looked at me as if to say, yeah, I'm a gift from your son. So I was pretty ecstatic. The blue jay looked at me for, a few seconds and then turned and flew off. So I know that my son, you know, drew my attention to the bird at a moment that I needed, a hello from him, and, a little bit of a cheerful nod that, hey, mom, I'm watching over you. I know what you're thinking, and I
Yeah.
wanted you to see this. Yeah.
Now, I gotta say something in connection to that, and that is that you saw that bird and you had the bird flying next to the car. It may not have been a bird. It may have been a conscious representation that they are able to create. The reason I'm saying that is because there is a story of a lady, I think she was down in Florida. She had somewhat similar thing happen, and there was a bird that had come and visited, sitting outside the window, looking into her living room several times. And she went and took a picture of the bird, but the bird did not show up on the film.
Wow.
So obviously, that bird that was looking into the living room with her was a mental representation that maybe someone on the other side created in her mind to make sure they could make some form of a communicative contact.
Well, that's beautiful. Wow, that's a great way to look at it, because we don't
Yeah,
always know. Spirit has some amazing abilities, and I could see where,
yes,
yeah, they can create an image of something and put it in our mind, and it may not be there. That might explain why sometimes people say, "Oh, I see something," and others around them are like, "I don't see what you're looking at."
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that can
Can I
happen.
It can happen. Let me give you another bird story, which I think is kind of incredible. And it was both my son and my husband who were giving me this imagery of the birds. My husband died 2 years after my son's passing. So, following his death, which occurred here at home, I had him in hospice, and I was able to work him through that whole process of leaving. Um, I was nudged by my son over a period of time to not only study about mediums and have medium readings, and take workshops and interact with people in this more spiritual community, but also to write a book. And there are several ways he pushed and nudged me to write a book, the book being what I have out now, Living and Loving Life All Day Every Day. This is the story of Matthew showing me the signs and kind of how I pieced everything together and where it has led me. But in writing the book, I was slow in getting it started. He made sure to, kick my rear and get me going. So I was getting close to finalizing my manuscript on this book, and I decided to review a few old photos and stumbled into a video that was on the computer. And I just wanted to refresh my memory on some of the timelines and some of the things I was writing about. So I ended up playing this video, and it was a video with my son and my husband in it. And it was one of those that, starts tearing you up. You get these emotions when you're
Yep.
reviewing something from your past. And I started feeling a little bit, over emotional, I think, and got, you know, my eyes welled up, and I shut them. And then I heard a noise at my window. And I looked at the window, and I have a window that slides. One half has a screen and one doesn't. On the part without the screen was a hummingbird. tapping on the window to get my attention, I presume.
Oh,
And I see that hummingbird and I'm like, wow, that's really cool because my husband loved hummingbirds. He's done this before, shown up as hummingbirds in my mind. But next to it on the screen was a second hummingbird, and this one was clinging to the screen and had its little wings splayed out, its beak pointing up, its tail pointing down. It looked like a crucifix. So I looked at those two birds and I was like, oh my God, this is Sal and Matt saying hello,
yeah.
hello. They knew how emotional I was feeling from watching that video and they just wanted me to know, hey, we're right here. It's okay. It's okay. We're right here. Then they flew off. It was so quick, I wasn't able to pull up, a camera or pull out my phone and turn on the camera to get a photo. But I know what I saw.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what I heard. And I've never had that happen before where you've got a hummingbird on one side tapping and another one clinging to the screen in that kind of a position. They never cling to the screen. So that was pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, and you got to remember also that when you were watching the video, the emotion came up. So emotion is the carrier of interdimensional thought.
Ah, yes.
Once you bring up, that's how you make contact with, what should I say, otherworldly entities. You got to have emotion in it, emotion and love, and you had them both. So there, that's where you made the connection. And then
Yeah.
they say, hey, wait a minute, she's looking at something emotional about it. So he came. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
And you having that hummingbird on the screen at the same time he was outside. Oh,
Yes.
that's good.
Yes.
I
Yes.
don't believe.
I wish my mind could have just snapped a photo that I could put on the computer and show you, but it's melted into my brain that image
Yeah.
of the one bird, flying and tapping and the other one just there on that screen. Is like, wow, you can't make this up.
Yeah. Tapping on the window. Hummingbirds don't do that.
No, one had done that previously. A few months after my husband had died, I was blessed to have a reading with a medium, and it was something that was sort of not that planned out that far. It just sort of happened that this medium had reached out to me and asked if I wanted a reading. So we're doing the reading. My husband is coming through the medium and giving her quite a bit of evidence. And one of the things she had said is, oh, he will be coming to you as a bird tapping at the window.
What?
So that was pretty phenomenal, right? Like a bird tapping at the window. But here's the greater part is that the morning before that reading, I was sitting at the table and a hummingbird had come and already had tapped on the window. So prior to the reading, I'm getting that tap, and I think of my husband Sal because, like I said, hummingbirds, he loved them. That was his favorite bird.
Yeah.
Here it is tapping on the window. So in a reading, she had picked up on that. I am assuming he came in and told her, "Hey, I already did it, but tell her that there'll be a bird tapping. She'll know what it means." So
Wow.
that was the two times I've had the hummingbirds tap. So it was at that day, and then 2, 3, 4 years later when I was writing the book. Yeah.
Okay, that is really something. And I see we are getting down towards the bottom of the show here, bottom of the hour. So for those of you that joined us late, we are talking with Diane Calderon with a real feel-good story that speaks to us of the fact that yes, we are able to communicate interdimensionally with people and things on the other side, so we are not alone.
Yeah.
And she wrote a book about. Do you have the book there where you can
I
show it?
do. I do.
Yeah,
It's
there you go. Okay,
Living and Loving Life All Day, Every Day, a mother's story of loss, love, and connecting with the afterlife.
there
It's
you
available
go.
on Amazon.
All right.
So thank you.
Yeah, and for those of you out there that like to have a feel-good story, go have a look at it, and because this one is good. And now we there's always people out there that say, yeah, but you know those people?
Mhm.
Oh God, there's hordes of them, but they're getting less and less these days. People are actually crawling out of the box, and some of us we burned the box. I have no clue where it is anymore. But there are people that say, yeah, but science says that the brain create these things for us when we drop the body. And I hate to use the word die. So when we drop the body, the brain recreates all these things in our mind and it
Hmm.
plays it for us. Well, the brain do goofy things at the very last moment, but after, that's a different thing.
Hmm.
When he's been departed for days or weeks or months and then things happen, that's a different thing. That
Hmm.
cannot be explained by Newtonian physics.
No.
So now we have to reevaluate for those nuts and bolt people out there. You got to start looking behind the curtain because that's where the good stuff is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think too that you are never alone. Have you had any? Now, this was 10 years ago that he dropped the
Hmm.
body and left, and now he's
Hmm.
probably somewhere else doing exciting things. But have you had any recent
Yeah.
experience? Okay, I'm all ears.
I mean, he is always around me. I know that. Um, Here's a really recent one. A few days ago, I was being interviewed by someone else. Um, can't remember now who it was because I've had a few interviews recently. But in this one, it was not being recorded on Zoom. It was just an audio podcast. But we have the Zoom cameras on, just like we're doing right now. And I'm not paying attention to the screen with my face. I'm actually looking at the person. It was a couple that were interviewing me. And I'm telling the story about my son. And every time I would mention his name, they began to notice energy around me. A light would just kind of go around me. I'm
Ah,
not seeing it. I'm not really feeling it, but they began to point it out. They said, "Oh, I don't know if you know this, but every time you say his name, this light goes around you." So I tried to look at the screen, but then I forgot and I wasn't looking. But it happened several times. So I know that he was here. He's just excited that I'm talking about him and his book and the story because he really wants people to know that life continues. I mean, he's there, and anyone who has passed over is over there in that spiritual realm, looking out
mhm.
for us and hanging around and keeping an eye on
Yeah.
what we're doing. So that is something very recent that he was doing, is just emitting this light.
Hmm.
I don't know if he's going to do it here today, but he's something else. He'll play songs for me. I'll get in the car, turn on the radio, and there'll be a special song playing on the radio station that blows me away. I usually listen to sort of the new age or the jazzy type music, and there'll be something like there's a special song he liked called "I Will Wait" from Mumford and Sons. That'll be playing on the jazz station. That's not really a jazz song. It's more of a pop, I guess. I don't know. And it's like, okay, Matt, thanks. That's really cool. So he will do that a lot. His name will pop up left and right for me. The one thing he really enjoys doing is playing with the electronics. He's done it the other day. I have one of those digital weight scales that you have to stand on it and it'll light up and it'll tell you, how much weight you probably should be losing and you're not. So I go in the bathroom the other day and was wash my hands and I turned around and I noticed on the floor, which is, a couple 3 feet away from me, the light was on the scale. The light is on. It shouldn't be on. It only goes on if you tap it or you're stepping on it. So I think he was just playing with me saying, God, mom, you've been eating too many cookies, something like that. Um, he plays with the ceiling fans. He installed them here in my house. And I don't know how many times I will be on the phone with his girlfriend that he had when before he died, or with one of my relatives. We'll be talking about Matt, and that ceiling fan kicks on. Just kicks on.
Hmm.
Um, One of the remarkable things he did previously is I am now working for a medium her name's Suzanne Wilson. We connected because my son saw me sitting around feeling sorry for myself and thought I needed a job. I did not know her, but somebody else that I knew through her had talked to this Suzanne, and Suzanne was looking for someone to work for her. So they connected the two of us, and I'm on the phone with Suzanne, and she says, "Yeah, when I called my friend and said, do you know anyone who might be able to, understand my work and what I do as a medium that could handle, calls and clients and whatever?" Um, she had said, "Yeah, I'll get back with you." I put the phone down, and then my ceiling fan kicked on, and I'm looking at my husband, and the remote's on the table and the fan's kicking on. And I told Suzanne, "Oh, okay, if your ceiling fan's going on, that would be my son because he turns the ceiling fans on at my house. He installed them and that's his thing." And she goes, "Okay, hold on, hold on." And then she says, "Okay, I've got your son. He's standing right next to you. His hand is on your shoulder." And he says, "Yeah, that's me. That's me." So he nudged me to get out of my funk because, I was still grieving a year after my husband died. Even though I know they're on the other side and they're in the spirit world and they're doing fine, I miss the heck out of them being here with me.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't know what I was going to do. Retired, what am I going to do with my life? Well, started working with Suzanne Wilson, and boy, has my life changed. And I have learned so much, and I have met so many people, and I'm trying to help
Yeah.
them with my story and with the awareness and understanding that, you know, this is just one little life we have here in this physical body. And we're going to go over to that other side and we're going to rejoin our friends and family and we're going to review what we've done here. And hopefully we've done pretty well. And by gosh, we may come back again and maybe again and again. Who knows how many times? But it's really kind of exciting. It's why, I'm loving life every day because there is a purpose to what I'm doing here. It's not about going through the tragedy and the loss and worry and just, oh, I can't wait till I meet them over there. Life really is crummy. It's, oh, let's have some fun until I get over there because I've got a lot to do and a lot to explore, and they're helping me do that.
Mm.
And let's help other people because if we can't show love for everybody else and we can't love ourselves, then life is kind of dull and boring, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when the bathroom scale lit up, did the numbers move too, or?
Yeah, it was flickering and the numbers were doing this.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get a good view as to what it was saying. Like, if you don't stop eating the way you're eating, you're going to be
Oh,
like 500 pounds. But it's like, I think he's telling me I need to cut back.
yeah, there you go. They're
Yeah,
a little sharper on the other side, you know. But
there.
the thing about it is that they have a way. He was probably standing on the scale
Mm,
because they have a way to create not weight so much, but an affinity to mass. Earth is down that way. So there's mass, and that affinity to mass could create something that we call weight when he was
mhm,
standing on the scale. Same thing as turning the ceiling fan on. There, I have ceiling fan here, and I pull a cord on it, and it turns it on. And the same thing with a lot of people say that they can turn the TV on, they can turn the light switch on. And I had that happen, and the lights were turned on. That was a while back when a good friend just left. And we had this agreement that, if you go before me, then you're going to come back and tell me, show me.
mhm.
And the lights came on in the room because I just had a little light on the desk, and the lights came on behind me. And I looked over to the wall, and the light switch was in the up position, which means it was on. And I know I left it in the down position where it was off. So
Mhm.
they have a way to even turn the switch.
I'll share a story with you. A few weeks ago, Matthew's girlfriend, Alex, she comes and visits me every now and then, and she was hanging out for a couple of days. We had been in the kitchen area making something to eat. It's hot, it's summer, it's pretty warm in there. That ceiling fan over the kitchen counter, I had turned on the switch so that the light could shine down on where we were working. And she had said, well, can you get the fan to run? Well, the only way to turn the fan on the way this thing is hooked up is through a little remote. You know, the switch is on to send power, but you need the remote to turn on that motor for the fan to blow. So I pulled the remote out and I'm trying it and it's not working. It's not doing anything. So I popped out the battery to replace it. It was a weird battery. I don't have a replacement for it. But she didn't see what I'm doing. I'm just kind of like looking at it and like, oh shoot, I don't have that kind of battery. So I put it down so I could, I think I put it in my pocket so I would remember to buy a battery, put it back together, set it down. And I just said to her, well, the battery's not good. I can't turn the blades on. She goes, oh, okay. So a little while later, we're sitting in another room and I noticed some movement in the kitchen. That light was still on, but I looked and the fan is going. The fan is blowing. And I said, hey, Alex, look in there. Tell me what you see. And she goes, oh my God, the fan's going. Oh, well, maybe the battery was good after all. And I'm like, no, the battery's here in my pocket. It has no battery. How did that happen? Matt, yeah, okay. How he did it, I don't know. But he got that thing going.
Oh, there you go.
Yep.
Yeah. They have a way to do things that amazes us. That's good. And now another thing that I want to mention, that is that when we think about what's outside of the physical, some of it is really hard to wrap our heads around.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to understand it better, we should talk to the ones that have died and come back and talk about it. There
Mm-hmm.
is millions of people across the world that have had near-death experiences,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they tell us they have so many similarities. I highly, very highly doubt that millions of them all get together and say, well, we're going to lie about this, all of us.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not going to happen.
That's not going to happen. And you don't have millions of them reading maybe one person's best-selling book on their near death and going, "Oh, yeah, I had that too, kind of, sort of," and make it up. This is coming from their own heart,
Yeah.
from their own experiences of what they've got. And yeah, each experience has a different variety, a different flavor to it, because each person is a different personality and they perceive things in their own way of
Yeah.
processing. But the theme is all the same. The theme is there's a greater force beyond us and that we never really die and that we are just exploring this physical world in these physical bodies, but true life is on another realm, on another level.
Okay, here's something for you that would you like to talk to him? Communicate voice to voice.
The voice to voice, it would be incredible if we could get pure, reliable voice to voice communication. And I know that there are people working on that. I'm aware of Dr. Gary Schwartz down at the U of A in
Yeah,
Tucson has been working on a soul phone, and it's his hope that at some point we could reach a stage where we could just pick up the phone and say, like, hey, how are you? And they could say, I'm fine. Um, that would be great if we could get voice to voice. I don't know
there
how
are
useful it would be,
there's
but it would
ways to
be
do. Yeah,
something, huh?
there's ways to do it.
Yep.
Just for fun, go to YouTube and put in the search bar, put a Tesla Spirit Radio.
Ah.
In 1901, Nikola Tesla patented a radio that could speak to the outside of the physical world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And when he had it put together, he was interviewed and he said something to the effect that I can't quote it, but I'll paraphrase. He said, I was alone in my laboratory and at night, and I had the radio on, and I could hear several people talking among themselves in a language I did not understand, and it terrified me. In 1901, there were no radio stations in the United States. The first radio station that was sanctioned by the government was set up in 1921.
Hmm.
So there were in 1901 there were a few radios, but they were usually at universities and they were doing research only. He had a radio put together that he could talk with these voices. In fact, it's only about 14, 15 different parts on it. You can get a
Mm-hmm.
part list. Go to Google and put Tesla Spirit Radio parts, and several websites show the parts. You can put it together. If you know something about electronics, you can put this together. And it's simple.
Hmm.
You talk to the machine, I mean the radio, and it almost every time you hear a voice coming back, if you ask for your son and feel the emotion and the love at the same time you talk to him, very good chances that he can come back and talk to you. But
Mm-hmm.
remember, outside of the physical, there are also pranksters,
Yeah.
people that can impersonate him. But if you ask him something that only he would know and he answers correctly, then you will know.
Then you will know.
This way, it works about 100% of the time, somebody will answer.
Hmm. Well, that's fascinating. I had not ever heard about the Tesla Spirit
Yeah,
Radio. I'm aware of was it EVP, electronic voice phenomenon,
yeah,
and I've heard um examples of that which have been phenomenal. But yeah, that would be interesting if you could have a conversation with someone in spirit without the use of, diving into mediumship. I have learned how to do mediumship and I have been able to, you know,
yeah,
contact loved ones of people that I might be reading. And that's a pretty interesting thing, but it's not as clear as, say, you're having a phone conversation.
yeah. It's not
You're not
clear.
saying, "Oh, hi, who are you in relation to my sister?" "Oh, yes, I'm her brother, John, and I was it's not that clear. You're just
Yeah,
getting impressions and feelings and you're getting bits and pieces of words, but it's
yeah.
not as clear as a
And
real
if you go to
conversation.
YouTube and check out the Spirit Radio,
Hmm.
Tesla Spirit Radio on YouTube, you will hear that there's some static in there.
Uh-huh.
But there is a way to get rid of that, and that is if you run it through a computer, then you can eliminate the static.
Yeah.
If you plug the
Wow.
radio into the computer, so there is ways to do that. There is two people on YouTube that are they have done that, and that's
Hmm.
much clearer, and you can very well understand the spirit on the other side.
Okay, like a spirit box.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's another one.
Uh-huh.
Google that one too.
Hmm.
Spirit box is another one that works pretty much every time. Oh,
Well,
it's
it's
interesting.
fascinating. Yeah. The way spirit can reach us, and I know it's not easy for them to reach us and communicate, and it's not easy for us to listen. We really have to work at it. Yeah, there's some people who are born mediums and they're, getting this interaction fairly easy. And there's people like me that really have to focus to make those kinds of connections. But I do think that the majority of us, if we're open to the idea that there is this realm of spirit and that they are connected with us, and many of them are related to us from our
Yeah,
earthly lives, that yeah, they would like to reach out and let us know things are okay and say hello. We just need to find a way to meet them at some level where we're getting that communication. I
yeah,
think things like the signs, the birds and songs popping up and the ceiling fans are a little bit easier for them to reach out, but we also have to sit there and be aware and put two and two together. Hey, my ceiling fan is on. Oh, must be an electrical problem. Or I was just sitting here talking about my son and that ceiling fan kicked on. So what
yeah,
is it? An electrical problem or was my son playing with the electronics? Ah, I see. Put two
yeah,
and two together and you'll be amazed at what you're finding.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think a lot of people listening to this, a lot of people out there, they have had unexplainable things happen.
Mm,
But the first thing we do, we try to rationalize it somehow, try to think around it, come in from the backside and say, yeah, it had to be just a coincidence. It
mhm,
couldn't be something like that. It's got to,
mhm.
we try to explain it away. That's the first thing we try to do. We should
Yeah,
quit doing that
yeah, we
because
should.
there is things that cannot be explained by Newtonian physics and accept that that is real.
It's sort of a comparable to those who are very deeply religious.
Yeah.
They really believe in whatever that system is that they're immersed in, and I'm not going to name any, but there's a lot of religions out there, and you really believe it. But is there proof? Is there
Hmm.
scientific methodological proof that this particular version of their beliefs actually exists? No, you take it on faith, right? So science cannot prove everything. So I feel personally that yes, there is a spirit world and I can communicate with them. Anyone can hear from them. And I don't need a scientist to tell me, no, that's not possible, because our methodology can't prove it one way or another, because it's not something objectified. It's not something we can actually physically see and measure, but I can feel it here in my heart. When
Yeah.
I hear something from my son, or I step outside and I'm thinking about him, and all of a sudden there's a little rainbow in the sky, which I had not been anticipating. Don't tell me that that rainbow isn't there for me to see as I'm thinking about my son. I know it. I
Yeah.
know it. There's a connection there. I can't measure that scientifically. And you cannot measure scientifically, some of the beliefs in the religious ideas that we have as man.
Yeah.
We just accept it at face value or at faith value. And I just feel that if we opened ourselves up a little more to understanding the world of possibilities,
Yeah.
that it is quite possible that there are
Okay.
spiritual beings around us, then we are a step ahead in our progress as civilization. It's interesting. I was doing some research for a subject that I will be presenting to a group in a couple of weeks. And in the research, I was looking at the earliest views of man on reincarnation and then bringing it up to a more current perspective. And what I find is that the earliest man in the tribal and hunter gathering stages believed in reincarnation, and they believed in spirit, and they had a personal relationship with a force greater than them. And over time in our civilization, it got changed into more of a religious perspective in which the only connection you can have with spirit is through a mediary, and it's a God who is in this particular form and not reachable on a human personal person level.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting how we've come, you know, through this stage, and now I think we're starting to go full circle as man is becoming more and more aware of, oh wait, there is a greater power, and it is part of me, and it is not an outside force that I need to go through, a priest or a shaman or
Yeah.
whomever to
Yeah.
reach. It's part of me. So it's
Yeah.
it's nice to see that we're coming full circle, but it takes a while. We've got to bring some people along with us, and eventually we'll all get there, and then we'll have those spiritual connections on personal levels, and maybe we will hear from our loved ones,
Okay.
without having these intermediaries or these mediums. We'll be able to hear from them.
Yeah. And in the early days of Christianity, from the year well, call it 35. He didn't die in 32, but
Yeah.
from that all the way up to the year 325, when the first draft of the Bible was created, reincarnation was a commonly accepted concept. They all
Hmm.
believed it because they have seen things, the people coming back, and they all believed it.
Yeah.
But in
Yeah.
325, Emperor Constantine, he wanted no part of it. Don't give them a
Yeah.
second chance. He says they're not gonna obey our laws unless they know that this is it. This is all you get. So you better be good now.
Yeah.
So that's all about controlling people.
It is.
But
It is.
then again, when you want the people that doubt, when you want to have evidence, they want physical evidence
Mm-hmm.
of things that is non-physical.
Mm-hmm.
Physical instruments cannot measure non-physical things. That's going to be hard to do,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
except for one doctor in 1907 that did it. Duncan McDougall, he was a doctor and he wanted to prove the existence of the soul. So he
Mm-hmm.
found over a period of time, he found about 7 people that was close to death. And he put the bed of the person on industrial scale. And they
Oh.
measured the person's weight. When they ate something, the weight went up. When they had, a release, urine or something, the weight went down. They measured everything with
Mm-hmm.
meticulous records of the weight of the person.
Mm-hmm.
Right within a very short time after they died, when they quit breathing, and for the next, dying is a process, so it doesn't happen right away. It just takes about a few minutes. But the bed lost 21 grams
Mm-hmm.
of weight for every one of them. Well, sometimes more, a little more than 21. So he said, something left the body. And he thought it was the soul, though I think different on that because the soul is entirely physical. I mean, spiritual, it has no weight, but the astral vehicle has an affinity to mass. So
Mm-hmm.
there was probably the astral vehicle that he was measuring. They lost 21 grams. So
Mm-hmm.
something left the body. And he wrote a paper on it, and you can find it. Google Duncan McDougall, and you can read the whole thing. And it's very convincing that something left the body. He thought it was the soul, and it could be,
Mm-hmm.
but there's something there.
There's something to that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
There's something there. And if you, I don't know, I'm not a physicist. I don't know a whole lot about it, but the theory is that we're all energy, we're energetic beings, we're
yeah,
vibrating at different frequencies, and the soul as such would be an energetic presence within the human body, and upon death that presence would then leave the body. It's no longer needed, the vessel no longer serves its purpose. And if energy has anything to do with maybe atomic weight, I don't know, but if there's a correlation between the energetic frequencies and the atomic weight of energy that would translate into the 21 grams, that might help explain. But I don't know. I don't know enough about
yeah.
weighing energy, but something maybe he
There's
was
something
looking at,
there.
Mr.
Yeah,
McDougall. Yeah.
absolutely. Gosh, I see we're getting down towards the end here. Talk
Uh,
a little bit about your book again.
okay.
Um, is there where they can get it, and also maybe a little bit about what is in it?
Okay.
That
So the
will
book,
amaze people.
just show it again, Living and Loving Life all day, every day, available on Amazon. Basically, I start the book with a little interesting story that happened shortly before my son's death, in which my husband and I were returning from a medical appointment, and we were going over to my son's home to pick up some things he wanted us to bring up here. And on the way up this one street, my husband started flipping out on me and saying, "Stop, stop, stop. Someone's going to get hit. Stop, stop, stop." There's nobody ahead of us. It's just a residential street, but it made me nervous and I pulled over and I'm like, we're okay. There's nothing going on here. There's nothing happening here. And he's like, "No, no, 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 no." And he's flipping out. Now he'd flipped out on me before in the car and I knew not to stop and let him out. It's like, okay, I just got to get him home. So I just, bypassed my son's house and went on home. Um, Interestingly enough, it is the same street that my son was crossing when he got hit by a car. We were just a few short, I don't know, 2, 3 blocks away from where that accident occurred a few weeks later. So I had a feeling that maybe looking back, that my husband had some kind of a premonition
Yeah.
on that date, but he was not in a state of mind to be real clear about it, but something was coming into him ahead of time. So this is how the book opens. And then I go into, how my son had died and, some of the things that I had to go through after that. But then eventually the realization that he had shown his continual existence in the spiritual world to me and how that changed my life. So that's basically what the book is about. Now, the name of the book came about because people say, "Oh, living and loving life, this is about a death." I mean, what are you talking about here? The name of the book came up from my son. He basically titled the book because as I was writing it, I didn't know what I was going to call the book. I had a whole bunch of ideas, and a fellow who helped me finalize it and get this ready to print had told me, "Don't worry about the title. Let me read the book and, see what I come up with." After he finished the book, he contacted me and he said, "Okay, the title is in your story." And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "It's living and loving life all day, every day." So when I got to that part where you talk about that particular phrase, it brought me to tears. And here's the story.
Mm-hmm.
The morning before my son had died, he had called me and we were having a little discussion and he was telling me, "I'll be up tomorrow, Mom, to help with Pops. And by the way, I'm applying for a job today at a local brew pub." He was trying to get a part-time job because he wanted to pursue his residential contractor's license, and it meant he needed to focus on taking an exam, couldn't be working full-time. So he was filling out an application. And as moms do, I gave him some verbiage on what to say on the application, like, what are your qualifications? I flippantly said, "Oh, that I like beer," like, no, no, don't put that, man. So anyway, he filled out this application apparently, but did not turn it in because after his death, as we're going through the house and cleaning things out, I found the application. And on this application that he was supposed to turn in that day for this job, the section that said, "What are your qualifications for the job?" Now, mind you, it's part-time brewer, just assisting, the guy who's making the beer. He wrote down, "Living and loving life all day, every day." Now,
Ah,
A, that's crazy. Who puts that down as a qualification for a job? My son. And B, he was not much for writing. And I am guessing that that application was the last thing he had in his hands that he wrote anything down on. So to me, that was his last words
yeah.
to me. Living and loving life all day, every day. That's where the title of the book came in. And when I look at it, and when I have heard from my son in a variety of ways, but I've studied mediumship, I've practiced it, I've been in circles, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes he drops in. And one of the things he emphasizes is he wants people to know his story, that this is not, the end of everything. Once you transfer over, you're in a spiritual realm. But hey, while you're down here in the physical, enjoy life because you never know when your time is up and you're going to go back into the
Yeah.
heavenly home. So while you're here, live and love life every day, all day,
Yeah.
because it's important.
Yeah.
And
His
so that's
story.
the meaning.
His story is not over yet, so it continues. I We're down to the end here, but I want to ask you
Uh,
one more question, and
okay.
that is that if you could speak to the whole world and the world is listening, what would you tell them?
My message would be that just know that we don't die. We don't die. We are forever beings, united in a spiritual home, that our love lives forever, that our lives continue. It may not be, for me, it's not me as Diane living here in Arizona. My life goes on into a spiritual realm in which I am with my friends and relatives. I do believe in reincarnation, so I'm hanging out with people from other lives, and that's great. But the bottom line is we don't die. Love lives forever. And I wish everyone in the world would learn that and accept it. And maybe it'd make things a little bit easier for us moving forward. And we wouldn't get so caught up in some of the drama that we get caught up in.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
This was a good story. It was a feel-good story that people can cherish and remember. And when you get the book, you get the rest of the story. There's a lot more that was never said in this interview. So thank you very much for being with us. And for those of you that watch this on YouTube, please subscribe. That'll help us. And then until next time, be good to each other.